Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures, released in 1994 for the Sega Genesis and also for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Now generally when one thinks Pac-Man, more often than not, they're usually thinking this. A game where you're guiding a little Pac thing around a maze, gobbling up dots and avoiding ghosts. That's been the traditional setup for this series in some form or fashion. And even though there's been the occasional deviation from the norm, for the most part, you had mostly this. And then along comes Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures, the sequel to Pac-Man. The one Pac-Man game that Namco deemed worthy of bestowing the almighty number 2. But rather than it being another maze game, as usually is the case, or even something tried and true like a side-scroller akin to Pac-Land, Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures is something similar to a point-and-click adventure game, one where you have no control over Pac-Man. The idea is that he just does whatever the hell he wants, and your job is to make him do whatever the hell you want him to do, either by telling him to look at things or hit things with your slingshot gimmick. And who knows, maybe he'll do it, maybe he won't, and if he wasn't in the mood, which can happen more often than not, he'd just blow you off. So as you're trying to get him to do the things you want him to do to progress in the game, he'll walk into a wall, off a cliff, bump into things, let rocks fall on his head. Oh yeah, this is a game worthy of a number 2, alright. Seriously, who is this loser and what has he done with the real Pac-Man? The game is divided into 4 chapters, episodes, whatever you want to call them, each with a main goal. There's the episode where you're trying to get milk for the baby, then you have to get flowers for a girl, then you have to try and get back your son's bike from the ghosts, and then episode 4 will eventually lead you to the final confrontation with the Ghost Queen herself. Or rather, Pac-Doofus has to do these things if he felt like it. And if he didn't, well, I guess we'll have to get the missus to do the deed or something. She seems like the most competent of the family. Now I will give The New Adventures a bit of credit. There's a sick, perverted pleasure in subjecting Pac-Ninny to copious amounts of pain and agony. I like pelting this idiot with my slingshot in order to make him angry, because then he'll ignore your commands and do something so incredibly stupid it will change your life. And since the concept of a game over is non-existent in The New Adventures, you could screw up as many times as you'd like and see how much torture you can inflict on this spineless twerp. Honestly, that's about the only real entertainment value I got out of the main portion of The New Adventures, and the animations are rather well done, all things considered. Just discovering all the different things that could happen here or there is worth the replay value alone. And because the game is somewhat open-ended, you could explore the world around you at your leisure. Well, okay, you'll need to clear the first couple of chapters before gaining access to the mountains in the city, but still, just roam around and get a hot dog, bust some ghosts, and have Pac-Weenie stomp off a cliff like a geek. Maybe you'll get to play some old arcade games like the original Pac-Man, and wouldn't that be something? Pac-Man 2 gives you all these little things to interact with and just mess around with, and the best part is that there's no real consequence beyond Pac-Boy's eternally bruised ego. But when you actually want to go forward with the game's 4 chapters, well, that's where the fun ends, kids. Because while watching Pac-Boob stumble around in the game world can provide plenty of laughs, eventually shit has to get done, and there's a preset sequence of tasks and decisions you'll have to make in order to advance the somewhat flimsy story forward. Too many mistakes and Pac-Bum gets depressed. Too much depression and he becomes resistant to outside influence as he slowly loses the will to live. Actually, now that I think about it, this is a pretty depressing game. Why do people like this game so much? What the fuck is wrong with you assholes? Seriously. In an attempt to kill the monotony of the gameplay, there will be instances where you will either use a hang glider to glide across mountains, or partake in a minecart ride. All I will say in this regard is that the less said the better. Despite providing the most control over Pac-Wim's fate, they're not very fun experiences. Sometimes you'll come across ghosts that you will have to fend off against, which you could do by giving Pac-Man a power pellet, which turns him into Super Pac-Man because, sure, why not? Wait, hold on, I thought this was Super Pac-Man. What's going on here? Who cares? For what it's worth, The New Adventures is a rather nice looking game. The clean looking visuals, the bright colors, the numerous little animations of Pac-Pot and his misfortunes. There's a lot of care put into this game to give it that sort of old school Saturday morning cartoon vibe, which works tremendously and seems to be the case as this apparently is based on the old cartoon from the 80s. Which I've never seen, so I'll have to take other people's word for it who claim this to be the case. You could say whatever you want about the gameplay, it's brilliant, it's garbage, whatever. But Namco didn't half-ass the presentation because it's pretty solid, charming stuff here. Likewise for the audio portions. The incoherent vocal bits are amusing, the hokey musical bits fit with the world you're frequenting, and on a whole, it complements the zany antics that occur before your very eyes. And indeed, when it comes to Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures, it is a mixed bag of sorts. On the one hand, it does have its share of personality, it's an upbeat little game I think, and actually encourages bullying of a gaming icon, and it's completely guilt-free because after all, it is a fictional character, you twits. On the other hand, the odd approach to gameplay definitely falls into that realm of mileage-varying tendencies, and it's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Certainly wasn't my cup of tea, as I was more interested in making life miserable for Pac-Poop than I was following the narrative of the game's 4 chapters, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't have fun with this one in some form or fashion, so there must be something there that's worth some semblance of play value. Look, an oddball Pac-Man title that goes off the beaten path isn't necessarily a bad thing. There have been several before and since this title that have done so to varying degrees of success. I think the main problem some people would have had with this game back then and maybe even today is that it was called Pac-Man 2 and sold as a direct sequel to the original arcade classic, even though, let's be honest, we've had several stabs at the quote-unquote direct sequel to Pac-Man the First in the past. Would the New Adventures garner more of a positive reception under a different name? I don't know. It's certainly worth checking out for the curiosity factor of the morbid variety. But if you want something a little more traditional in your Pac-Man games, you've got plenty of other options. Even within the realm of point-and-click adventure games, it's an interesting idea, I'll give them that, but not one that I find myself going back to all that often. Unless it's the Super Nintendo version, which I've yet to play, so that'll be fun.